Hi, I'm Botao, and today I'm gonna give a little bit my presentation about this paper called "Video Games and Spatial Cognition." I want to be a little bit quicker this time because last time was kind of too long. It was like 30 minutes. I was trying to be more concise in this. Okay, in this one. So let's begin. So basically, this paper talks about how playing video games could actually affect the execution of spatial tasks. And a video game can change the process in spatial cognition. So um, so basically, despite the lots of different kinds of game, but certain types of genre like action, driving, maze, puzzle, these are the type of games that believe to impact spatial cognition the most. So these game genres often requires a range of cognitive skills from problem solving to quick reflexes, mirroring real world cognitive and social demands. Action game, for example, like COD are mostly FPS, but also offer third-person perspectives that emphasize the realism, sometimes causing motion sickness in new players. Early researchers believed that practicing these games could enhance spatial cognition skills. Yeah, and research on the impact of video games on spatial skills started nearly 30 years ago with the rise of personal computers and game console. From games from the late 1970s and early 80s like Pong, Pac-Man, Tetris. Several studies tried to see if video games could bridge this gap, like the gap of like gender difference in spatial cognition. With They find that the women generally underperforming compared to men. So that's their idea, and the study is trying to see if video games can help to bridge this gap, with games resulting in spatial skills improvement for women. However, the early research had methodological issue, making it challenging to conclude whether video games could indeed narrow the gender disparity in spatial cognition. And okay, let's come to methodology. So basically, uh, to determine if gaming could improve spatial skills, control tests are very necessary. You don't want to be like inviting some professional gamer and to some of the people who never play games before. That could cause very biased result, and the result could mostly favor in the professional gamers. So participants ideally new to the game should be tested before and after gaming. That creates a control group. A control group is crucial to rule out improvements from repeated tasks. You don't want to be like people is getting better at this game just because they are doing the repeated task. Everyone could get better if they are doing the repeated task. And participants should be split randomly into control or training groups. The control groups should play a game without expected training benefits. Both games should be similar except in the training aspect. Matching participants' starting skills ensures fair comparison between groups. So you don't want them to be very largely different in skills. So initially, research on impact of video games on cognition mainly focused on their relation to performance on spatial ability tests. So basically, what they do is that they ask them to play before to fill out a basically almost like standardized test. And early studies aim to see if video games could enhance spatial abilities as gauged by, as I said, standardized tests. So action games could transform core attentional process. Action video games have shown unique benefits in enhancing foundational function like spatial attention, perceptual resolution, and contrast sensitivity, alongside advanced spatial skills like mental rotation. So, sensory processes. So, early visual computation, such as basically in this part of the paper, the authors basically talks about how human actually the process of actually human perceive image and visual information. So initial process for vision involves light interacting with millions of neurons in the retina, and the results are conveyed to the brain from the optic nerve for further processing. And there are different kinds. Even the human brains has some computational steps in the whole process of seeing stuff, like early visual computation, like edge detection, shape perception, and color processing. These often happen unconsciously. So that means as human, when we're seeing stuff, these steps are usually happen in our brain unconsciously. So wow, this is pretty powerful for our brain. So however, some of these basic functions can be influenced by attentional process. Like with fancy graphics, modern 3D games can have align more naturally with our perceptual system, which is basically these games are they have so much graphic details and very realistic. This basically it's mimicking our reality world. So we can use that. So recent research has confirmed the positive impact of such games on sensory skills, including visual spatial resolution, contrast sensitivity. We can use that to train our these skills. For example, like FPS, the player must swiftly detect threats across a vast visual landscape, potentially enhancing sensory processing. So basically, when they're playing FPS, you need to where's the enemy? Is the enemy behind this wall? Is there any visual detail I can tell that the enemy is there? I need to be very sensitive about whether there's a guy hiding in the bush or there's a guy behind the door. These are all requires highly concentration. So that could also be helpful into the training of the human sensory process. So, and then comes to attentional process. So basically, in nowadays context, is the attentional process basically very crucial for action video games, which frequently present sudden visual stimuli. So the visual system is very selective, focus on crucial information to avoid some overwhelming processing. Like any changes or movement in the visual scene, they can get your attention and can give you a priority for analysis. This process of attentional capture helps us to survive, highlighting sudden threat, and this is how our ancestors get us here. However, recognizing and focusing only on relevant stimuli requires visual selective attention, and a process involves both basic perception and higher level cognition. So it's not just one type of stuff. So basically, attention can also be divided among multiple objects and tasks, but dividing attention can reduce speed and accuracy. So here they also introduced two kinds of attention. And so for example, in first person shooter games, player must detect and monitor threats in a very dynamic, cluttered visual environment, and this could improve the player's spatial selective attention abilities, causing benefits for various tasks. So additionally, FPS games often requires very subtle discernments between objects under high stress condition, which might not be as critical as in other game genres. So that's the FPS genre comparing to other genre. and there's also visual motor, coordinator, and speed. So the visual coordination is the ability to synchronize visual with motor action, and it's very important for everyday tasks like riding, walking, or playing sports. So you need to, in your brain, you have to align the visual information with our actual action. So action games primarily engage hand and eye coordination. The eyes guide attention while the hands execute tasks like aiming, shooting in FPS game. And even Tetris. Even Tetris rapid decision on piece rotation could require very precise hand-eye coordination. So essentially, video games that combine dynamic visual with precise motor controls can enhance visual motor skills. As players get more adept at these games, their speed and accuracy normally will rise. Okay, memory. So there are two types of memory is relevant to the video gaming. They are working memory and long-term memory. So long-term memory allows for very big and prolonged information storage, but might not be as pivotal for most video games. But on the other hand, working memory, which is very temporary storage for very active data manipulation, and that is very important for many games. So basically, the long-term memory is good for like if you're trying to remember a word, if you're learning a new language. This is the type of memory you need to. This is the type of memory it will be sorted. Working memory is mostly like short time memory. Those are the memories that you're gonna use when you're playing video games. But so typically, people can only hold about 4 items in the working memory at once. So the success in many tasks relies on efficient use of working memory, which interacts with long-term memory, influencing each other. So, and also let's talk back to that. So in FPS games, players often need to evaluate multiple threats, determine which to address first, and use which tool. The speed and precision of these decisions are the key. So basically, you need to remember, what tools do I have? Remember the enemy was there, stuff like that. These also use the working memory. And so this is a very long and boring article. I didn't expect this. So the mechanism of learning. So the video game training is basically very tempting because the potential for very broad and lasting positive effect on cognitive ability. While if you're comparing to conventional training methods, they can be more precise, but the video game training is more like can give you many long-term benefits. So basically, first-person shooter, they can emphasize spatial attention, navigation, rapid threat assessment. These are the benefits for FPS. Even Tetris, they can help you to enhance spatial skills, and especially the one akin to the game mechanism. So let's get back to so in this chapter, the author basically talks about training with video games or the traditional task. So typically, learning from repetition on perceptual tasks is very long-lasting, but it often remains task-specific. However, certain training, including video games, has shown generalized benefits, including performance in area beyond the specific training context. Some video games can even boost fundamental cognitive function like spatial selective attention, which underpins more intricate tasks like mental rotation. Yay, Tetris. So there are also a very big benefits for the video game, which is very obvious, is the motivation. So motivation, the player normally, when you're playing a video game, the players can have a very high level of motivation when playing their favorite games, leading to increased play time, and heightened arousal. So this enthusiastic engagement is very important for effective learning. You don't want to be like, this is a very effective learning way, but you can only be interested about it for 5 minutes. That's not a good way to learn stuff. And also, game design learning. So basically, nowadays, all the video games, they're designed to have tons of different levels, difficulty, different mechanism of playing, which could allow player have different skills to engage, like processing through levels, enhance the sense of accomplishment, and further fueling motivation. And we also cannot ignore the effect of sound and immersion. So these like music, sound effects, character dialogue, these can also enhance immersion and motivation. And there are also some very potential benefits for diverse group. For example, if you are making a game that is very, very family friendly, these can also, if you're, let's say, because previously we mentioned FPS, we don't, FPS is good, they are very, but in some way, from the author's point of view, it's kind of violent, and it's kind of skill required. It's not very friendly for like elder, young children, or even some for just for every. It's not. They're not. It's not for everyone. But if you are making a family friendly game, this could lead spatial skills improvement for everyone, for women, children, senior. Everyone could benefit from the enhanced spatial and attentional capacities. And then the author introduced like a two basic application. Is that because previously on the first place, I mentioned that there are gender differences, and basically he got a report that saying there's a worldwide underrepresentation of women in STEM careers, addressing a gender disparities in spatial abilities that might result in more equal participation of women in these fields. If the author's point is that if early training could use to equalize the spatial abilities across all kinds of gender, it might lead to more aligned educational and career choice between girls and boys. So if these kind of training can be applied to people when they're very young, so all kinds of disparity will be terminated. And these are very realistic. Yeah, so yeah. And then the other point of view is that the video game could also help elder with their aging problem and help to train their brain. So the global demographic shift shows an increasing number of senior citizens sparking interest in brain training as potential solution to age-related cognitive studies. So they're basically having games. This Nintendo game, tons of these kind of games show up after Nintendo released this Brain Age. So many successful commercial video games are often addictive, which could lead to intensive practice, which also could lead to very notable and lasting cognitive changes. Considering action video games that show improvement in spatial attention and processing speed, they might offer more effective training approach for seniors than basic brain training games. FPS games in particular could be more beneficial in cognitive remedy in seniors comparing to like simpler puzzle games, which is very common among brain training platforms. So if you search online brain training, ton of things are just puzzles and some kind of stupid puzzle games. And these seems they're claiming that they are very helpful to training your brain. That this, according to the author's opinion, it's okay to play regular games. These can also largely help us to help us to build our spatial task ability. So basically, video gaming, especially action games like FPS, has been shown to induce changes in the brain, often in a beneficial way. Such gaming also positively influence basic and complex spatial tasks, and the improvements tend to last long. There's also a very interesting aspect that he also talks about the benefits in education field. So the observed benefits from video game play introduce a novel approach to study the transferability of skills. Basically, the author is saying that how people can learn, can improve their spatial skills, the way that people gain experience from that. We can also learn how to teach other fields of other type of sensory stuff according to how video games change the spatial cognition. And studying the impact of video games on cognitive training provides a very fresh perspective on understanding the learning process in spatial cognition. Far from being just the pastime, video games might serve as a very effective tools for cognitive enhancement and can be bridged out many various age groups. It's not just for young people, young teenager, adults. Could also help for seniors, and these are all learning patterns that we should learn. And this is pretty much the whole points of this paper. Honestly, I kind of regretted to choose this paper. It's not exciting as I expected, but basically from the whole paper, the author just talks about why we can learn from we can gain more spatial cognition from playing games, and how would that change people, and why that is better than just traditional way, and what different kinds of application that people can use the advantage of playing games to gain more spatial cognition. And basically from my perspective, I think playing games to increase our skills is definitely more tempting than just regular traditional platform that is like do the test, do the standardized test to enhance your ability. That's definitely sounds repetitive and boring, and the idea of playing games can have that kinds of effects is definitely very shocking, and I think that is very provides a insight for me that for some of my current research. So I think this provides a very, very interesting idea.